Welcome to the In Love with PMDD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist, and I help you stop the monthly PMDD breakups. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It is in approximately 1 in 5 women, and it makes you want to break up with your partner approximately 1 to 2 weeks before your period every single month. So as someone who has suffered with PMDD for over 18 years, I dedicated my doctorate practice to helping partners navigate those monthly PMDD breakups with everything from attachment styles, triggers, sensitivity to noise, sensitivity to touch, all of the things that you really struggle with when you're in PMDD. And I also dedicated my dissertation to a phenomenological study of the relationship experiences of partners of individuals who suffer with premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So I'm not just here to help the sufferer, the one who is suffering with PMDD. I am here for the partners as well. So if you need those private sessions, make sure you go to inlovewithpmdd.com and get those tools. So let's get into this week's PMDD trauma transformational tools that is going to help you stop the monthly breakups and stop the suffering and stress in your PMDD relationship. Let's get into it. So today I have a special guest, Amy, and we're going to be talking about boundaries with dating and PMDD. So as you all know, I had my breakup about 4 months ago. And so, dating is on the horizon at some point. And there's a lot that comes up when you have PMDD and you go on this journey of dating and adding someone into your life, and things that you really have to be cognizant of and knowledgeable about when you're thinking about adding another individual to your life. And it's not really something that you can take lightly, unfortunately, because we have PMDD. There's a lot of damage and trauma that can happen from adding the wrong person to your life. So I'm gonna just check in with Amy and see how her dating journey has been going. So welcome, Amy.
Hey, yeah, PMDD and dating is such a, I think it is a huge topic, isn't it? Like, and the PMDD side of it, I think we have to really take into account trauma and attachment styles. And we really have to come into them with a very authentic look at ourselves. So I have a disorganized attachment style. So I can be both anxious and avoidant. Like if you run, I will come. If you come close, I will run. So that's always been a pattern for me because love was always a really hard thing. And love equated to pain a lot of the time for me. So a lot of it. And I think because love is so primitive, affection is so primitive, even not necessarily sex, but just the craving to be touched, the craving to be wanted and validated and approved is very primitive. But also when we're looking at it from a cyclical basis, what we normally find as well is when we're ovulating, we're very horny. Let's just keep it as it
Yes.
is. We're horny, we want what we want. But when we're coming into menstruation, we want affection. We feel this kind of craving and need, like hug me, give me that affection. So some people don't. Some people want to be left alone. And it's good for you to kind of notice that cycle. But when you're single, it's also really important to notice that as well, because that can affect how you kind of see relationships. But when it comes to dating, it is really important it's all about emotional investment, really. And it's all about learning what you really want. Because if you're 22 and you're just like dating, wanting to hang out and do whatever you do, then you do that. But I think most of us with PMDD, we have enough going on. If we want a partner, we want a partner who is reliable, who doesn't confuse, use, abuse, manipulate. We want someone who is consistent, and we want someone who makes us feel a sense of safety in who they are. Like we know that they are this person. And I think for myself, recently, I did connect with someone, and years ago I wouldn't have done this because my fear of rejection would have taken over. But now I'm a 30-year-old woman, and I've been through enough stuff. I will say what I need to say, and if you don't like it, then toodles, like leave me alone. And that has to be the case now. And I think when you get to that point, it becomes a lot, even in the pain, that becomes peace. So I was very forthcoming about, do like we're speaking. I'm a very sporty woman. I have many male friends. I know what it's like to have a friend in comparison to someone who you feel that attraction to. So I said to this guy, we're speaking with the intention of dating to eventually move towards marriage. Now, I'm not saying, are we going to get married? I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, this is my goal. I'm dating someone with the intention to see if we have the same viewpoint to eventually get to this point. Now, some people don't value marriage, so that might not be a thing for them, but for me, it is. So that's what I say. And then when they say no, it's like, okay, well, I need to leave them because I'm not. And I know some people might be like, oh, but you're not giving them enough time. Maybe they change their mind. No, if you're saying this is what it is, then I'm leaving. I am, and also because some guys then like to push and they'll
Mm-hmm.
continue talking because the thing is we like, and it's not, this isn't just with men. Boundaries, people have this kind of perception of boundaries, like I'm going to say it, you're going to respect it, and everything's going to be okay. No, that's not how it works. I'm going to put up a boundary and you're going to kind of push.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to get to the point with this person where I'm like, look, this is where I stand, this is my line, you meet me here or not. And then I respectfully blocked them. And not in a, it wasn't an aggressive, oh, I don't like you, I'm blocking you kind of thing. It was I'm blocking you so that I can't have contact with you in this space because this isn't beneficial for me, because it's a waste of my emotional investment because we are not going anywhere. And my mental health and my sanity and my emotions are really important to me, and that I think when we have PMDD and we look at our boundaries, we need to come to a place where we realize we're important enough. But it wasn't always the case for me. And I think there's also grace and love and compassion that we have to give ourselves if we are in positions where we do say things and we can't stick to our boundaries. Because it's not, it's easy to say, yeah, I'm going to stick to this, but it isn't always easy. I have done it before where I've said it and then the craving for love and affection is so much greater than the need to put up the boundary that I go back. But now I have come to such a deep place of healing that I know I'm still in my peace, you know?
Yeah. I feel like peace is such a common thing that everyone with PMDD really just craves and needs and wants. I've heard it so many times where it's just like, I just want peace. But I love what you said about the boundaries. I think the hardest part about setting boundaries when you have PMDD is when you get into PMDD, because I've set boundaries in my follicular phase, my ovulation phase, and I felt very strongly about them. And I'm like, yeah, I made a good decision. Like, I was good to block this person. I was good to let this person go. They didn't fit into the alignment of where I know I want to go. And even if I don't have a perfect picture of what my life is going to look like years from now, I know what fits and what doesn't now. I know a lot of that from trial and error, from having relationships. I recently realized from my breakup that I need to be with someone who is calm and kind and nurturing and is really a balance to the feminine energy that I have, not in a sense like I always went for the alpha male, right? Because I thought that that's what I wanted. And I thought I wanted the alpha male that would just take charge and all of these things, because what I was doing is I was connecting to that individual when I was in my masculine energy. So I thought that's the type of person that I want. But what ended up happening when you have two people that are operating within their masculine energy, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of bumping heads. There's a lot of who's going to do this, who's going to do that. Like, you're both in the driver's seat, and eventually somebody has to take a passenger seat, and they're not going to like it because you're both operating in that masculine energy, and they're going to resent you for that, right? And so after the breakup, I really leaned into my feminine energy and I started to attract, still the alpha males, but I don't know if there's like I don't know like the beta, alpha, beta, or whatever, but what I was attracting were individuals that were attracted to my feminine energy. Like I literally had someone say this to me on a date, like, I really just love how feminine you are. You're so nurturing and you're so soft and and not even soft like weak, but like soft, just like gentle and kind and all of these things. And I prided myself on the opposite. So I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, I didn't even know that this was a thing, but I had really worked on myself to heal. And so I was in this place where I wasn't trying to compete with someone. I wasn't trying to show them about doing. I was just being. And they were
Yeah.
attracted to me being. And so I realized, when you're setting these boundaries, and I noticed I liked being with someone who liked just me being. They didn't require me to do, and show them and prove stuff to them and show up in all these things and push and push and push. I could just be myself and, be intuitive in what I wanted to do and everything. And they loved that about me. And so when I saw someone that was the antithesis of that, that was the opposite of that, that was wanting the more masculine energy, I had to set up, I'm like, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to be in that space again. I know that it doesn't work for me, or I know how it ends up. And so when I put up this boundary, and I said, okay, this person is not going to be in alignment with this new version of myself that I want to stick with. I want to stay in my feminine energy. I want to stay soft. I want to stay nurturing. I want to stay kind and loving. And I want someone to embrace that and be kind and loving back to me. Um, I was fine with it until I got into PMDD, and then there was these intrusive thoughts like, what if you made the wrong decision? What about all of those other qualities about them that you were in alignment with? It's hard. Dating is so hard when you're in PMDD because it's almost like you're ticking off boxes. You're like, oh, this works for me, this works for me. And then when you reach this point where you have to set a boundary, there's still all of these other things that you're aligned with that you're kind of like, did I make an impulse decision? Did I just do this because of PMDD? Or maybe I could have made it work, or maybe it would have got better over time. And so I started to second guess my boundaries and almost like, say, if you block someone, I was like, should I unblock them? Should I give them another chance? Because I literally had people that were like, do you want to go for a chat? Do you want to talk about this? You set the boundary and you say, hey, before you block them, you set the boundary and was like, hey, this is not going to work. Well, like you said, they're going to push that. They're going to be like, oh, well, can't we just talk about this? And then you're like, well,
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't be rude. Like I felt rude for being
Mm,
like, no, I don't need to hear anything more. I've seen everything I needed to see. I know this is not going to work. And
yeah.
unfortunately, I don't need to have another conversation about it so that you can convince me otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much in what you just said there. Like the first bit where you say about peace, I always, all I've ever kind of prayed for over the years is I just want peace, I just want peace. But
Mhm.
it actually takes a war to get to peace. Sometimes, peace is like particularly because what peace really is that internal tranquility. But because with PMDD, we have so much trauma, so much uncertainty within us, so much pain within us that finding peace takes time, and we really have to fight through the internal war to get there. But then I really loved what you said there about boundaries shifting within PMDD. I think it I think we have to understand like what boundaries really are, because a lot of the time we put up boundaries that we think we should put up, but we're not ready to put them up. It can be the same with anything, isn't it? It's like an alcoholic. It's like, I need to put down the drink, but if you're not ready to put down the drink and you're not ready to surrender to the process, you're not going to do it. And it is the same with boundaries. It's not just, well, this is what I should be doing, so I'm going to do it. And I've done that plenty
Mhm.
of times where it was like, okay, no, this is a boundary. But the wavering part really come from the fact that I actually wasn't sure if it was a full boundary. Whereas this time, this happened. I'm like right in the depth, waiting for my period right now, and I'm in the thick of that. And there have been moments where it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But really, not so much, because that the scales have changed, and
Mm-hmm.
my peace and my what I want is more important than this
Yeah.
person. It was done in a respectable way. And that's the thing, isn't it? When we start to go beyond the boundary of why the boundary is there, and really come to a place. I listened to a really amazing podcast the other week, and the woman was saying, boundaries aren't rigid. Boundaries are actually about letting go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I'm saying. It's like that I'm here. If you genuinely want to be with me, then come meet me in the middle. And if not, then we're not meant to be. And
Yeah.
that, I think, is a real big challenge that we can have sometimes in PMDD, because there can be such a craving for love. We stay in relationships that really do confuse us and really do make us question ourselves. And I think, when you then led on to the masculine energy and the feminine energy, a lot of us have been so hurt. I'm not, I don't want to say all men are this, that, and the other, but we've all, I think, just societally, like, women have leaned more into being masculine now because of a lot of things that we now have to do. And especially, in that cyclical way in our luteal phase, irregardless of PMDD, we are meant to be kind of slowing down, but society is that go, go, go. So we do stay in our masculine energy, and we are afraid to lean into, as you said, the softness, the being. But when we can find like a man that actually allows us to lean into that,
Mm-hmm.
it can feel hard initially, because we're not used to being soft. We're not used to feeling that sense of security and
Mm-hmm.
safety. And it can feel really scary and confusing, because there can be that kind of sense of, well, that's kind of weakness. Soft
Yeah.
feels weak. I need to
Yeah.
be masculine. And it's like, how do I kind of come out of that? I've been through a lot. We know that a lot of women, most women with PMDD, have a lot of past trauma, which does make our anger and our rage very strong. And that normally comes from being so hurt that we can't feel our hurt. We have to stay in our rage, which again is leaning into that masculine, because we're not able to come into that place of, actually, I'm really hurt. So
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to be, or it feels, until we really go into the subconscious and we go into the trauma healing, easier to just be angry, because that's protection. And I've had that as well in a lot of these situations where it's like, men, just doing it again. They're always hurting me. And it's like, and then when I allow myself to be like, oh, okay, like, that's quite aggressive. That's very tarring everyone with the same brush. What's underneath it? And underneath is normally that little girl who has that blueprint of pain and rejection, and doesn't want to feel it because that feels too painful to feel.
Mm-hmm.
But when we can go into them places, and we can really connect into that younger part of ourselves, and we can really connect into our body, we start to realize, actually, she deserves to have boundaries. She needs these boundaries to keep herself safe, because she's been through enough. And we build that connection with ourselves, where we become the one who can put the boundaries up and say, no, I'm not letting her go through more stuff like this now. We can see, and I think one thing as women, I don't know if you've ever read the book The Art of Seduction
No,
as
I've
well, but
seen it. I haven't read it. Mm-hmm.
yeah, one of the things in that is that, men, and again, I don't want to say that all men are like this, but there are, the thing of men pushing boundaries and telling us sweet little lies. And we do have a tendency as women to, and maybe men as well, but because we're directed towards women here, like, to believe we can change them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there could be a very easy part of me in this context with this guy to be like, but, we have such a good connection. Maybe I can change it. Maybe if we just, it's like, no, if he is saying that, just listen. As painful as it is, and as much as you don't want to be in reality because you hope this person could be this, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to waste the connection, you are wasting so much more of your time by hoping that he will be something that he is telling you he cannot be. And I think that really allowing yourself, because we do as women have a tendency to go into a little fantasy. It's like I can change him, maybe things will change. Maybe he's saying that now, but maybe it will be different. Just listen to his words. If he's telling you it doesn't want a relationship, if he's telling you he's confused, if he's telling you this, that, and the other, the more you can just be in the reality of that experience, the better. Because otherwise, more time goes, weeks, months, and you stay in it with that hope. And then eventually you just end up in the same place. But now you have even more emotional deposit that you have to go through, and you've wasted time. And I think one thing in that as well is we have to come. I know it can feel very cheesy to say, but we have to realize if you don't want to see that the world is full of abundance, realize that there are plenty more fish in the sea, you know. But we do have to come into that place because we get attached, don't we? We get so attached to this person and this relationship and this thing, and it's like, well, if it's meant to be, it would be. If he is meant for you, he would choose you, but he isn't. And it
Yeah.
doesn't. We have to really come into, because a lot of us do have a lot of rejection sensitivity as well, and we stay in it because we can't bear that. But it's not your fault. It's not about you, it's about them. And the more we can come into that place as well, the easier it becomes.
I love what you said because I really think that there is a fear, and I know I've experienced this before. There's like a scarcity mindset. Like when I connect with someone, I'm so like I realize how I don't know if it's weird. I don't know what it is. I just remember going into the dating and I'm like, I don't belong out here. Like I want because I'm used to being married and connected and committed and that's my thing. That is I'm my best when I'm in a relationship. And so when I'm in that in between period, like it's not comfortable for me because I want to meet you, see that we're compatible, and then immediately I'm like, okay, so you're my person, so that's it. So we're just gonna be together and that's it. And we'll just figure everything out after the fact. Because in my mind, I literally thought, like I don't think it now, unfortunately, because I've lived it, but I used to believe anything that you like, as long as our morals and values are aligned, as long as you believe in God and these things are like firm, then anything else I can figure out about you, we can work it out together. Like I'm going to be with you for the rest of my life. Like we'll just work it out together. And I
Mm,
realized that that's not always the case because there is a lot of I have trauma, the other person has trauma, and you have to see if that can exist within each other. Like if it can exist in the same realm, if you've healed from it, if the way that you heal is in alignment with the way that the person heals. Um, a lot of it is, a lot of relationships that have ended for me have been things that I've seen in the beginning that I literally thought, like you said, we can work it out, or you know you can convince yourself that over time you can fix the person and not fix them like they're a bad person or anything like that. But if it doesn't fit, if the puzzle piece doesn't fit, in my mind, I'm like a molder, like a welder. I'm just going to weld it down until it eventually fits because maybe they're just not loved enough, or maybe I can do something that can, cause them to not be this certain way. But I've seen the red neon flags from the beginning, things that haven't really felt right. But I hold on to all of the things that do, like I'm an optimist. So I'm holding on to all of the things that do feel right. I'm like, there are all these other qualities that they have, and the scarcity mindset comes in that. What if I meet someone, it's that 80-20 rule. Like, what if I meet someone that only has 20% and I'm leaving the 80? Like 80% of them is great, but this 20% is like a red flag for me. Well, I'm thinking, oh, I'll just accept the 80 and then the 20 won't matter. My relationships have ended over the 20. Over that
mm,
20% that is because it's been a big 20% that really it never changed, it never went anywhere. And it's like if you don't like this kind of treatment from the beginning, over time, you're not gonna eventually adapt yourself to it. You know what I mean? Like I'm big on yelling. Talking loud and yelling and cursing and all of those things are very triggering for me because I grew up with that kind of childhood trauma. But I just assumed that if the person has all of this other qualities that I would get used to it or it wouldn't bother me as much or blah blah. And what happened is it just got worse. And so you end up years later ending a relationship over the same things that you saw in the beginning because time just made it worse. And so the more things that came up, um, you just, oh, and reading in between the lines. So I like when you
Yeah.
said about when people just come out and tell you who they are, which I truly believe that in some way people do. They tell you who they are, what they can do, what they're not going to do, and we may believe that, we can change it, but we have the tendency to not read in between the lines of what the person is saying. Like they're giving you a signal of that they're not going to change in this particular area. And you don't want to see it. So instead of like reading in between the lines and seeing what it is that they're telling you, you're choosing to brush over it and to not really investigate what it is they're saying. And because then if you really come to the realization of what they're saying, you have to make a decision based off of that. And I think a lot of us don't want to make that decision. So we're not even going to like ask them a second question or even ask for clarity and be like, hey, by that, did you mean that you're never going to change about that? Like, you don't want to hear that answer. So you never really ask. And so I really think that over time, I got into that realm of people pleasing. And I never thought that I was a
Yeah.
people pleaser. But I
Mm.
realized because of my childhood trauma, when I get into relationships, I want to please my partner. And a lot of that makes it really hard to hold firm to those boundaries. Because if I'm trying to please you and I'm trying to hold boundaries, somebody ends up losing and that person ends up being me because it's like, well, I have this boundary, but my boundary isn't in alignment with what it is that they want. So
Mm.
I'm gonna like lower my boundary to try to meet what it is that they want, when in reality, that's me giving away my boundary.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when you were saying about the reading between the lines, the thing that comes up as well is because I'm sure people will say, well, sometimes they lie, and
Mhm.
sometimes they say things, and that's so true. Luckily, because I think that a lot of us, the majority of us, have blueprints of how relationships go, or what we tend to find that tend to be related to our relationships from our parents and our past traumas. But I think we need to remember that body language, speaking communication is only about 4 or 5% of actual communication. So you will know deep down if this person is genuinely into you by
Mm.
how they're messaging you, are they on time? Like what are they doing with you? Are they asking you questions? Are they interested? There's so many layers. But again, because we have such a craving for love, and we, especially when we've got a lot of trauma, that we have such an internal desperation to prove things wrong and to prove, we are lovable, we can do this, that when we find someone, it's easier for us to hide in the lie within us. And
Mhm.
we create the fantasy and read between the lines. They're just kind of showing up, probably being a bit lazy, not doing too much. And we're like putting this kind of facade around them because of our own need. And I think that is also where there's a sense of, as painful as it is, saying, you may need time alone. You also may just need to be alone for a while, understand your attachment, understand your love language, understand yourself. What are your boundaries? Who are you outside of this? What do you like just for you? Not just in that relationship, because we also need other things. We're not, life isn't just about, I think we have been brought, things are changing now, but we have been brought up, a lot of us, to believe that, we're going to meet someone and everything, romantic love is everything. But actually, we don't just get in a relationship and the puzzle is fit and everything is okay. Like, we're meant to be two people that are internally working through stuff and feeling more, we're not wanting to merge. We're not wanting to meet someone and become a part of them, because that is where things get
Mm.
really toxic and confusing and unhealthy. But we're wanting, I don't know if you've ever heard of the saying, an undefended heart. We're wanting to come into these relationships together in a place where we can grow together. Who are you? What are your goals? What are your values? Who am I? What are my goals? What are my values? How do I communicate? How can we come into this space together and actually support each other to grow, and actually be selfless together. You know, your goals are this, my goals are this, my values are this, and really just learn each other. And because that is what I think that we get very stuck sometimes in the fact of you're meant to be meeting my needs in
Mm-hmm.
this. But
Mm-hmm.
even in that, it can also be confusing because then it's like, okay, if it's not meant to be about me, then I'm meant to just be giving and giving. And as you said, then it comes into the, well, is that people pleasing? No, it's not about going into a place of unhealthily people pleasing. It's about two people breaking down their structures and coming into a place of intimacy that isn't sex. You know, sex, yes, you know, sexual intimacy is important, but emotional intimacy and spiritual intimacy and connecting on deeper levels and not allowing the triggers to overwhelm us. You know, actually coming into that place, this is a trigger for me, communicating things, connecting in that space. And that is what, you know, a true relationship is about. That most relationships are about us. It's
Mm-hmm.
about us filling a need of validation and approval. And I think a lot of the time within our PMDD, it's why are you not helping me? You know,
Mm-hmm.
I am struggling with this. And again, it's being careful as I'm saying this as well, because yes, your traumas are important. And yes, your partner should be supporting you and helping you. But if all the romantic relationship is about on both sides is I am here to fill your cup, you are here to fill my cup in a way that's like selfish, it becomes so toxic. Like we're people and we're both we're a team. We're meant to be a team. We're meant to, you know, communicate, and we've all, you know, we've all got our shit. No one's going to come into a relationship, I mean, unless you're really lucky, without baggage, like past relationships or past traumas. But it's about us coming in and putting our defenses down and saying, you know, this is what, and this is also, you know, in this context of what I was saying at the beginning, this was a huge part for me. Like, it wasn't easy for me to be vulnerable about what I wanted because I could have been rejected. But I'm at a place where I love myself enough and I have enough self-respect inside and self-esteem inside of me to say, look, this is who I am. I like you. I genuinely like you and I see something with you. What about you? And that is an undefended heart because it's not me trying to like sway like, oh, like does he like me, try and say I'm just coming at you in a real
Yeah.
way and saying, look honey, I like you, I see something in this, do you? And you know, it was yes I do, but I don't see something. Okay, well then I have to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that is me just being undefended. And when we can get to that place as human beings, as women with PMDD, where we love ourselves enough to realize, as painful as it is, my self-respect and my esteem is more important, so I'm just going to be honest. And if he doesn't like it, you know, and if I say it and he manipulates and I leave it confused, then definitely walk away, you know,
Yeah.
because not I tend to go for, I tend to find men that are very forthcoming and philosophical in who they are, but they're also very confused. It seems to be a blueprint for me. But like, you know, some women do find very toxic men who very, you know, abusers, and there is that caution of like, if you are being forthcoming in that and you are leaving the situation, you have to trust your feeling, not how you feel about them, how you are feeling when you're in that situation. Do you feel confused? Do you feel stressed? Are you feeling like they're telling you the sky is green when you know it's blue? Because if they are, block and walk away. You know, walk away from that. You cannot change them, you cannot fix them. And I think that's a huge, you know, big ass red flag.
Yeah, because if you're confused and they're causing you to be confused, especially if you have PMDD, you have brain fog anyway. Like you can barely it's a horrible place to be if someone's playing with your mental health in a sense of like nothing's making sense. You're not feeling rested. You're feeling this sense of anxiety.
Yeah.
Nothing's really making sense. You're always on edge. You know, you're heightened. You're very sensitive to every text message that you get. You got to dissect it. And did they mean this? And did they mean that? Like your cortisol levels are so high because you're so stressed
Yeah.
out over your normal day-to-day interaction. That's only going to get worse. And I think within that confusion, people do play games, unfortunately. And if you feel like you don't have that sense of clarity, you're not going to get it from listening to
Yeah.
more of their lives because they're just going to say more things that are in alignment with what they want you to believe. So
Yeah.
trust yourself. A lot of
Mm,
times you think you need closure. You think you need to have that final conversation. You think you need to, you really don't. You
no.
yourself are being told everything that you need to know. And I know it's hard to really set that boundary. But I wanted to go back to what you were saying about being vulnerable because I think it's very hard for individuals who've been hurt in the past to open up and be vulnerable with
Mm,
individuals. I've seen this a lot with private clients where they have this aversion. They almost want to make the other person prove themselves to them in order for them to be open and vulnerable. One of my clients said that they asked someone that they were dating, are you safe for me? Do you
mm,
consider yourself a safe person? And the person didn't really know what they were talking about. What they were trying to say is it safe for me to open up my heart to you? And
mm,
I understand the premise behind it, but I don't think anyone is literally going to tell you, no, I'm not safe for you. Like
mm,
no one on the other side is going to be like, no, I'm not safe. Like if you open up your heart to me, I'm probably going to break it. I'm going to damage it. I'm going to hurt it. Like they're going to tell you, yes, absolutely, I'm safe. Are you going to believe them after they say it? No, you're going to. So here's what happens with a lot of individuals that do the work. They have so many rigid boundaries. They have so many boundaries that's like a wall and you can't get past it. Like it's
mm,
almost like even if you have pure intentions and you're purely genuine and you just want to love them, they've created this boulder of you need to be this way. I need to feel that like they're so not in alignment with how they're feeling. They're so disconnected with how they're feeling because they're trying to protect themselves. So I think there's
mm,
a sweet spot of having boundaries, but then also being open to if someone is a green flag, like embrace the green flag, because what my client was saying was they just seemed like there was too good to be true. So they were digging to find something wrong with the person just to fulfill that self-fulfilled prophecy that there must be something wrong with them. I've dated them for weeks and I can't find anything wrong with them. They must be hiding something or they must be a certain way. And it's like there are still good people out here. And a lot of times when we haven't fully healed, we may miss out on good people because we're literally looking at them and waiting to be hurt. It's that
mm,
trauma bond. You're waiting to be bonded with someone that causes you trauma, and then you can relax. It's almost like you can actually create scenarios to where you
yeah.
create a traumatic experience. And then you're like, I knew it was going to be like this. It's like, no, it wasn't going to. You facilitated this. You created drama where there wasn't drama just so
Mm,
you can be comfortable in it. So you have to really recognize when you're dating, if you have unhealed things, one of my mentors says, don't bleed on people that didn't cut you. If the person you're
yeah.
dating didn't cut you, stop bleeding on them and treating them as if they need to prove something to you. They've not lied to you. They've not cheated on you. They've not betrayed you. They've been nothing but open and honest and given their heart to you and trusted you, but you
Mm,
still are holding back for them. You're not willing to be vulnerable with them because you're like, I just need more time to see. I just need to see because you have all these, boundaries and rules and timelines when the person genuinely might just be trying to love you and be good to you. And you might miss out on that because no one wants to feel like they have to prove themselves to someone that they haven't actually done anything to. And so
mm,
that's the other side of the boundaries that can kind of get you. And that's where I feel like discernment really has to come in. If this person is a green flag for you, let them be a green flag. Give them the benefit of
yeah.
the doubt. Don't make them do a whole circus show just for you to be vulnerable to them when they're being open and vulnerable to you, because it takes a lot from them. And it might feel like to them it's one-sided. Like I'm pouring my heart out to you, I'm being open and vulnerable, and you still have this wall up. And that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, and I think when you were saying as well about, what your client had said there about are you a safe person? I think it also comes from you within yourself still not feeling like you know how to protect yourself. I think that because, you know, again, if I just say this is my boundary, it doesn't mean I can implement it. It has to be rooted and planted in the depth of me, and that is work. That is because there's so many buzzwords about self-love, self-esteem and stuff, but actually really what self-love is, even if this is painful for me or uncomfortable, I know that future me is gonna feel a lot
Yeah.
more self-respect for doing this. And I think when we, say things, and I relate to what your client said there. I've said that a lot, and I always actually have been very almost too honest because I've been through a lot of sexual trauma, and
Yeah.
I've always been very honest about it in relationships in a way of like, okay, I need to say this because then they won't hurt me. Like
Yeah.
me telling them my trauma won't make them manipulate me. It was a very, a very psychological thing inside of like, well, if I say that and I'm just really, really honest, then no one's going to hurt me because surely people are nice. Because I have a very innocent soul inside deeply because
Yeah.
I'm a kind person, I want to, but not everyone, unfortunately, the world is a little bit more insidious than that. And people do take advantage of certain things. But what happens is when we realize that we can defend ourselves and we can protect ourselves, then that becomes the premise of it all. That's where we can be vulnerable because, there's no, being vulnerable is a risk. Like it's always a risk. Like if I say I like you and I would like something, they might say yes, they might say no. And I have to know that I can handle it. And a lot of the time we take these kind of, side roads, and not that we're trying to be manipulative, but maybe we are being slightly manipulative in the way that we're kind of speaking because we're trying to pull out, do you like me? Without just saying, do you like me? Because
Yeah.
we're afraid of that. But when we can come into that place of, if you don't, I like myself. And that's okay. I'm a good enough person. I am worthy. I am innately worthy.
Yeah.
Either way. And listen, and it might feel hurtful because I'm not made of stone. If I like you and you don't like me, or you do like me, but you don't want something with me, that's gonna hurt me. But I've saved myself a lot of time,
Mm-hmm.
confusion, and I want to, and that's the point of healing, that we get to a place of authentic living. But to live authentically when you've been hurt so much also comes with, we need self-protection. We need to learn how to protect ourselves. So it's not just healing the wounds, it's also what are my behavior, what are the behaviors that I'm going to do for myself when I'm in pain. So when that happened, that I was in pain. It hurt me that I had to, because it would have been so much easier for me to just keep carrying on speaking to this guy.
Yes.
But in the long run, no. So I had to sit, I had to curl up in a ball at night and feel the sadness of like, okay, this doesn't feel good. And I had to sit and pray, and I had to give myself a hug and say, it's okay. And I had to grieve. And it wasn't, it's not like it went on for long. But this is also a thing that the more we can be in the feelings of what we're feeling in that experience after we've been vulnerable, the easier, instead of just being like, oh, I'm okay, it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
Don't lie to yourself, because all you're doing there is depositing more pain that you're gonna bleed onto other people in the future. Because then if I say, oh, it didn't hurt me, then I'll be like, oh, men are all wankers, don't really like them anyway, blah blah blah. Instead of being like, actually, I was honest and this person didn't want it, and I feel a lot of pain. I'm feeling angry. I'm going to feel my anger. I'm feeling really sad, and I'm going through the process of grief so that I can actually just let go and move on, realizing that if this wasn't the person for me, they're just not, and there's someone better out there. And having the mindset, even in the pain, that what's meant for you will come to you. And I think that is also where within the healing there's a lot of philosophical movement we have to do, because we have to heal the past and we have to move through the traumas, but we also have to really go in. Myself and yourself are both believers in God, but some people aren't. Some people are atheists, some people are agnostic, some people like people have a plethora of different beliefs, and some people don't even know at all what they believe. And I think what's really important in that as well is to ask yourself. Albert Einstein had this really good question before, like, do you believe the universe is good? Because if you don't, and I think that a lot of us within PMDD can have a very pessimistic view of life,
Mm-hmm.
you're then going out dating and this person hurts you, then even underneath it all, you get to the root of yourself and you're like, this world is just crap.
Yeah.
Everything's me. And we really do have to do that philosophical searching of what is my fundamental belief about the universe as well? What is my fundamental belief about God? Because if you believe that underneath it all, things, everything comes out in the wash and things are good, it will be okay. Then when the emotions, when we move through the emotions and we find ways to do that, then we get to that part of like, this is painful, but I know I'll get through it. And I know the right person will come. And that becomes the baseline. But for us with PMDD, there is a lot of work that we need to do to get to that place. We need to deal with our traumas. We need to move through our rejection sensitivity. We need to do the inner healing, the somatic work, work through the attachments so that we can come into that place. Otherwise, if we're dating and we haven't done any of this work, we're just everything's a trigger.
Yeah.
Everything's a trigger. And I would really say that, if anyone is listening, like, don't date if you haven't done the work, because you will cause yourself a lot of pain. You will. And me and Rose are coming from experience in that, and many, many other people. I was in a very abusive relationship for 5 years where it was just what you said previously about constantly wanting the resident. I would write him letters weekly
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm trying to say, because he would gaslight me so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I write him a letter and explain this, then he'll understand, and it was like, because I was so manipulated by him that I really was like, well, I must not be explaining myself well. I must have to work on my communication. And again, because my heart genuinely wants to do that, it's like I would write this letter, and again, I would always be told that I was wrong. I would always be this. And it took years for me to get out of
Yeah.
the relationship. And it took me another 4 or 5 years. It's only really been recently that I started properly dating again. And it took me years to get out of the entanglement of what that relationship done to me as well. And that's what we need to think. You really do have to protect yourself, because you don't want to waste years with, don't waste years with a wanker. Like, is really the
Yeah.
fundamental thing. Don't waste years with someone who is wasting your years, especially as a woman, because we don't have, I'm a 30-year-old woman now. I want to have kids eventually. I don't have time to waste. I don't have, and that's why it's easier as well for me to put up this boundary now, because for me, having children, whether I have my own or adopted, it doesn't really matter to me. But fundamentally, that is more important to me. So I'm not wasting my time. And that's where the scales get changed. It's like the vulnerability, the not wasting time is more important to me now than needing your approval.
Yeah, because you're thinking more about the future. And I think the hardest part of the whole thing is the detachment. That's always the hardest for me, is detaching from, because I'm a very routine person, and I don't know if that comes from having PMDD and managing it. And so, but I'm very spontaneous with on the go and love to travel and all those things. But when it comes to people that I have in my life, like my inner circle, like I'm very, like if I start dating you, like I'm doing the good morning and the good night text and the stuff. So when I decide to create a boundary and say, okay, this is not, my person anymore, now I don't have these little things within my day. And I'm like, oh, that's what causes like I want it, like that you want to go back. It's so much easier to just like, if I fix things, I can have this back. But you kind of have to look full circle and like, what is it that you want? And you have to have something like you want to, get married and have kids. So you have this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that you're like, this is what I want. So this is more important to me than staying in a situation that's never going to give me that. And I think everybody needs to have that thing, because it is very easy to just go back. It's very
It is.
easy to stay. It's very easy to settle because you
Yeah.
know what that looks like. when you break away, you don't know what that looks like. It's almost like I don't know what hand I'm dealing myself. Am I going to get another hand? Like, are they going to deal me more cards, or am I out of the game altogether? Like, you get all of these what ifs.
Yeah. And I think that that again goes back to the scarcity mindset.
Hmm.
It goes back to what's going to happen if I leave? I'm going to have nothing. Nothing's going to change. I'm going to be alone forever. I'm going to, because we don't, and it can feel such a cliche of, oh, the, life is full of abundance and stuff, but really we have to ingrain that deep within us that you are worth more. But it's also
Mm,
it is having a balance, because if you're, because we're, especially in the context of, we're talking about dating rather than actually being in a relationship, really.
which is different, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. And in that dating stage with PMDD, we really have to come into this with that, looking at ourselves as that kind of, as a delicate person, and being like, who do I want in this world of mine? Because my world is hard enough as it is.
Hmm.
Sometimes I have enough stuff going on. I want someone who can love me, who I can love, who I can pour my love into, because a lot of us are empathic people, we're highly sensitive people, and it's not even just about us wanting to receive love. We so badly want to love people, but we want our love to go to someone who deserves and
Hmm.
respects our love. So we really need to, before we go into the dating scene, we need to come to a place where we know, or we're more sure of our protection. Because when you go back out dating, you will be triggered, because there are certain things that will only come up as you start allowing yourself to engage in these interpersonal relationships. But we need to have enough tools to deal with that.
Yeah. So
Mm.
I am looking forward to continuing this conversation. I'm so glad that you came on. Dating and PMDD, so much comes up, so much comes up. And I guess this is the journey that we are on. I
Yes.
am like,
Yes.
oh my gosh.
But it's
But
beautiful as well. You learn
yeah,
more and
I
more about yourself.
learned so much. Yeah, it's a big discovery process, and it's stuff that I wouldn't have learned if I wasn't dating or even open to it or even thinking about it or even like having clients that are dating. Like you just learn so much in the process. And I would just say to everyone that's listening to embrace the process. Don't rush through anything. If you
No.
realize that you get to a stop sign and that stop sign says heal and you need to make a legal U-turn and like go retreat and go back and do the work, go back and do the work. Don't ignore those signs that are telling you that you're not ready because you're
Yeah.
just going to be continuously not ready. And if you feel like you're ready and it didn't work with one person, don't get into that scarcity mindset. Know that there's other people out there and just think positive and stay and just really be clear on what you want. And if you're not clear, that's another, legal U-turn. Go back to the drawing board. Maybe, dating a person is letting you know what you don't want. And so you're like, okay, I can't deal with this when I'm in PMDD, or and it doesn't necessarily mean if you set boundaries and you cut people off and you block them and you put them on, do not disturb, silent, mute, whatever, it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just doesn't
No.
mean that they're not your person, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it in a bitter way because we don't want to carry
No.
any bitterness, any resentment, any of that into letting people go. You can let people go in love. You can bless them and send them on their way, and they can, go on and be amazing for someone else. Right? That's what I firmly believe. Just because they're not for you doesn't mean that they're not the person that, may be perfect for someone else.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. And you have to do what's best for you at the end of the day. There are ways to do things, definitely, but we're on a learning process. So it's about self-compassion as well.
Yes, so until next time, we got this.
We've got this.
I hope this PMDD episode helped you and your partner in your struggles within your relationship. And if this is something that you know that you need help with and you need further support, individualized support, make sure you're going to inlovewithpmdd.com and you're getting those private sessions to really work through what you're going through in your relationship, specifically in regards to PMDD. And also, I want you to leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. What this does is it helps other PMDD sufferers and partners find this show that can help them get these free PMDD relationship tools. I remember what it felt like to not know that there were tools out there specifically for PMDD relationships. So I want to make sure that you are sharing these tools with others, share them on your social media, share them with people that you know that are also struggling in their PMDD relationships. Until next episode, this is Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist. One more thing, I almost forgot. I now have the Fresh Start PMDD Partners Workbook. What this workbook can do is if you've had past traumatic experiences with your partner, past fights, past arguments, and they keep coming up every single month in PMDD, I created a Fresh Start Workbook so that you can deal with all of the traumatic experiences that have happened in the past in PMDD range and all of these things so you can stop going through the same cycle again and again and again. So get that workbook. It comes with a video episode of the actual podcast that I recorded on getting a fresh start in your PMDD relationship. So you're not continuing the same cycle again and again and again. So make sure that you get that workbook. And if you need those individualized counseling sessions, you know where to go, inlovewithpmdd.com. Until next time, we got this. Love you.